So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two speakers. We are happy and thrilled to have Jean Bliss, author of The Chief Customer Officer, join us today. And we will have Omar Gottlieb, co-founder and Chief Customer Officer of Tatango. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Jean. Jean?
Hi, Christine. Thank you. And hi, Omar. So good to be with you. And hi, everybody. Great to spend some time with you today. We're going to talk about the role of the Chief Customer Officer, or as some are calling it, the Chief Experience Officer. And what I want to do is really just spend some time orienting you to a little bit about my background. I'm not going to hum the bars very long about myself, but just wanted to ground you with the fact that we've got a lot in common. I was able to start my career at Lands' End, and Lands' End was easy, if you will, from a Chief Customer Officer standpoint. The customer focus was the way we grew the business. We had a B2C orientation around how we shipped and picked and packed our products, and the focus of how we grew was by focusing on the customer and employees. So for me, it was keeping us true to our core values as we were growing 60 and 70% a year and bringing a lot of new people into the business. So that role was really about culture and staying the course so that we could continue to grow. The next place I went to was Mazda Motor of America. That was a very different situation. As many of you who are in very product-centric organizations know that when you are a very product-centric company, the product is king. What we needed to do in Mazda was work with a highly diverse and very broad spread distribution network called a car dealer, and start to get some consistency around processes, and importantly about the accountability between the manufacturer and the car dealership. And so that was really about two things: creating some accountability, and also from a customer data standpoint, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this. This was many, many years ago, but we had about 46 flat files that needed to be organized into the very first relational database so we could create that ROI for the customer. After that, I went to Coldwell Banker. Coldwell Banker was a B2B business. Again, many people in the audience are B2B, and the important thing about that was really segmenting customers and building a servicing model that made sense depending on the size of the business, the category of the business, and what was important to those businesses. A very large real estate brokerage company was at a very different place in their arc of growth than a smaller company that had been converted. And so that was really about being agile in our service model. Allstate Corporation, a large multi-billion-dollar company with B2B and B2C. That was about, for the first time, introducing the idea of a customer journey to the organization, and also creating a connection between what we would do to the agent and earning the right to the agent recommending Allstate as the insurer of choice. And so that was a very, very important journey there. And then Microsoft, as many of you know, Microsoft, the idea there is about not boiling the ocean. Part of the work of the Chief Customer Officer, as you'll hear in a few minutes, or Chief Experience Officer, is picking off a piece of the business, and in Microsoft's case, and many companies that are this large, find those early adopters, whether it's someone who leads a country or a part of the business, and connect with them, do something, get some success, and then earn the right to keep doing the work. And that's really the key in these huge companies to driving the work forward. This probably looks familiar. This may or may not be the silos that you have, but the work of the Chief Customer Officer is, I call it the human duct tape of the organization, to move the company from delivering based on the silos to starting and orienting the company to think about the work of the business from the customer journey outward. You know, it's not that people in your company aren't working hard. Everyone is working hard. Everyone is dedicated. Everyone means right. But what we find and what we know, because our scorecards are based on silos, is we're all working hard separately. As a result of working hard separately, what we inadvertently deliver to the customer is this bubble you'll see on the bottom left portion of your screen, which is a random experience. the customer's experience is dissected by different parts of the business. An example, for example, is there is a company I know. It happens to be an insurance company, and it's not necessarily Allstate. It could be any kind of insurance company, and I've seen this happen in many insurance companies, where the actuaries are rewarded and recognized based on managing risk. But the marketing people are rewarded and recognized based on upselling. So in a single day, conceivably, in this kind of a company, a customer could receive a letter from two parts of the business, one, canceling one policy, and two, asking them to add another policy to the policy that had just been canceled. And so what the customer receives is this whiplash effect as they run, disconnect across all of the silos of your business. Look at your website. As you look at the orientation of your website and how you bring up different windows or experience certain things or promise customers things, you might promise one thing on the website, but the reality of delivering it is completely different than the promise that was made. That's the silos. The work of the Chief Customer Officer is initially to move the company from feeling they're boiling the ocean to understanding and creating consistency on how you even define the stages of the experience, and also to create focus. Back at Lands' End, we mapped the touch points of the customer experience, and we knew there were about 300. Every other company I've worked with since, we've mapped the touch points of the experience. But even if you do this and you have 200 to 300, I can guarantee you that you have 10 to 15 that are most important to customers to managing relationship, reliability, and long-term growth. Focus there. Build reliability there, because your customers leave you for many reasons for the blocking and tackling and the lack of reliability. Here's a company I love, which is called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And a perfect example of how to grow business based on something as simple as junk removal, and they did it simply by being reliable. Their goal, in fact, was to become, this is kind of funny, the FedEx of junk. And so what they did was they removed the lack of reliability about something so simple and mundane in your life, but that was usually a pain in the neck. And the idea here is when you need to get your junk removed, you call what they call the junction, or you log in, and they will schedule within a 2-hour time period when somebody shows up. They don't show up in an old rusty truck with people who look like who knows what. You don't want to let them into your house or whatever. To these guys who are in uniforms, men and women, they sweep out your garage. They take care of your things. They will donate your clothing to whatever society you want. And they can, for example, charge a premium of about 20% more than a random junk removal guy because there's that reliability and peace of mind. And by just hardwiring reliability in junk removal, they have become the biggest of its kind, and they have created a whole vertical that didn't exist before. So the work is really about moving your organization, as I mentioned, being that human duct tape, to move your organization from delivering your organization chart to your customer, who, by the way, is the only one who sees the function or dysfunction of your organization, to delivering a differentiated experience based on the customer's life. You need to know their life to serve their life, and part of your job is to be a storyteller, to tell the story of your customer's life. Here's some sobering facts. This was based on some Net Promoter information, and it goes right to the heart of the matter of reliability. In fact, 34% of customers say bad experiences are caused by interacting with a rude or disinterested employee. Now, this can be someone who they talk to on the phone. It can be an email interaction. It can be a chat interaction with so much chat going on. Again, people connect the humanity of the business to those answers, how responsive they were, and how mechanical or human they seemed to the person on the other end. So the goal of the work, let me summarize, the goal of the Chief Experience Officer or the Chief Customer Officer is to do two things. First of all, to build an engine, and what I'm going to show you in a minute are 5 competencies where we can build an engine inside of our organization to always know the emerging issues in an organized manner. I bet in your company, like many that I've worked in and many that I now coach, what gets done is based on either anecdotal feedback, your customer service group ships out some letters and we try to surmise what the issue is, or the survey results come in once a year and we do all kinds of analysis and try to pick 3 or 4 things, which by the way is lagging information by the time it gets to you, or your executives are out in the field and they say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. What we need to do is create an engine where you know in an organized, in a calm and seamless and united way with your executives where you must be reliable and where you're out of whack on that reliability. And that's based on 3 tenets: understanding the growth or loss of your customer base and having your ear hardwired to that growth or loss. Not retention rates, not survey scores, but the actual behaviors of your customers and what's happening that shows you that that bond is either lapsing or growing. Building a listening engine that relies on information to drive real-time and aided feedback, and driving one company improvement. What we do is we create these great dashboards, but then everybody silo by silo cherry picks the action. The other work is to drive customer experience innovation by creating a united approach to how everyone looks and thinks about the life of the customer. Drive innovation around thinking about the customer's life and having that innovate beyond the break-fix mentality and changing how you do annual planning. So I'm going to walk you through the 5 competencies of customer experience companies in a brief way so that you can get an orientation to this information. And there's a lot more information on this on my website, which we're going to give you at the end of this, so you can go on and take a look at this at your leisure. The first competency is around this notion of managing and building a customer journey and orienting your company around the customer's life. And this was actually built by the president of SAS Airlines, Jan Carlson, and what he noticed was, and not only noticed, but was brought to task to it by his board, was that his industry, along with his business, was profitable until 1981 when deregulation hit a lot of things, and they became unprofitable in 1982. At that time, he was the one who crafted this idea of the customer journey and moments of truth and figuring out where his company needed to be very deliberate in delivering those moments or those interactions where if they didn't, they would lose customers and lose growth. And by focusing on that journey and those moments, he moved profitability of the company back in 1982. And these are ultimately what determined whether SAS would succeed or fail as a company. And when you think about this, you know, your customer, we use the word brand a lot, but brand to the customer is not a slogan. It's not an advertisement. It's the outcome of these moments of truth. It's the outcome of these touch points. And it's the outcome if they say or don't say to the customer that you understand your needs, their needs, that you're there in a reliable way when they need you, and that you earn the right to them choosing you and to recommending you to other people. Think about Amazon, another great example of a reliability engine. You know, Amazon is about reliability. It's not big wow moments, but it's peace of mind. They sold their first book in 1995. If they didn't do that sale for you and for everyone else, I mean, when I give speeches now, I ask people, is there anyone who has not bought something from Amazon? That reliability around the world has become their growth engine. So think about that in your business. Are there places where sometimes you deliver right, but sometimes you don't? Sometimes you deliver based on the person. That's your brand, and your recommendations from your customers live or die based on that reliability. Now, here's what's powerful. The lack of that reliability, or if you flip that, if you can be reliable, you will see a 300% revenue gain by reducing negative word of mouth that comes from not giving customers peace of mind versus just improving positive buzz. A lot of people thought that social media was about really getting customers to talk about them, but it's about earning the right earning the right to peace of mind, earning the right to customers recommending you because they feel confident that if they can send you to their friend or colleague or relative, that they're going to get the same experience. They're online by recommending you. So competency 1 is all about creating the framework for earning the right to growth. And this is what I call managing customers as assets. In my Chief Customer Officer book, I call it guerrilla metrics, because for many organizations, this is about guerrilla metricing, guerrillaing your way into the organization. Most CEOs want to see an ROI around this work. Some say we're going to do it because it's the right thing, but the important part about this work is that it is a growth strategy, and so we need to start by creating alignment in the business about what we're growing. We have falsely put our success metrics of what customer experience work is, in many cases, only on survey results, or first on survey results, or on numeric numbers. We've also talked a lot about retention rates. Now, retention rates are interesting, but they frequently give you a false positive. The point of managing the customer as your asset is by using the whole numbers and by knowing if you are bringing in growth only based on acquisition, and by being very deliberate in explaining to your company how much you're losing each month. So, for example, one of the things I want to teach you to do in this competency is start every key meeting, every key communication by saying, as a result of the experience we delivered to our customers this past month or quarter or year before annual planning, here's how many new customers we brought in, volume and value. And say it in the whole number. We brought in 50,000, but here's how many we lost, volume and value. We lost 42,000 whose value exceeded the unknown value of those we brought in. The difference between your new, which is how good your marketing engine is, or how good you have earned the right to customer recommendations, and your loss is your incremental growth. And by positioning your business around managing this asset, it will flip what the work is. Now, what I want you to think about as a Chief Customer Officer of your company or a Chief Experience Officer is that your job is to be a storyteller, to tell this long run-on sentence I'm going to teach you in a minute that connects all of these competencies. So the next competency is around how you tell the story of why that asset grew or shrank in the last month or quarter or year. And that's around alignment. Now, customer touchpoint mapping is a shiny object right now, and a lot of organizations are doing it. They're bringing people together to do touchpoint mapping and having a great day, but then it sits in a binder or there's a lot of touchpoints on a wall somewhere. For me, the idea of touchpoint mapping is to get agreement on the stages of the experience. And more importantly, to use those stages as a framework for communication, for reward and recognition, and for talking about the life of the customer. So even before you do touchpoint mapping, you need to agree how many different versions of this journey do we have. In a B2B and B2C customer model, for example, manufacturing, let's say, you have a distributor customer who you might use as your distribution arm, so you need a journey between you and them. And especially in a model where you're relying on them recommending you to the end customer, you need to earn the right to that recommendation. So that's a journey you need to get agreement on the stages of. When I talk to companies, I'll say, have you done journey mapping? They'll say, oh yeah, we have, but frequently what it is marketing's done their journey map, which is about marketing. Sales has done their journey map, which is about the sales process. This is not about our internal processes. This is about the customer's life. And what this does is builds that framework for you so that when you start with that customer asset story in the beginning, you say then, let us now traverse across the stages of the experience, and I'm going to walk you through where we failed the customer, met their expectations, or innovated and exceeded expectations. So here's a little tool for you. Take the stages of your experience and bring a group of people together, and you can cut and paste this or just build your own version of this, and ask a group of your employees, stage by stage, are we always reliable in that stage? are we usually unreliable where things don't connect, or are we sometimes reliable and sometimes not? And that is the grade, that is the report card of your brand. The other thing I encourage you to do with this is as you build each stage of the experience, also write the things your customer is trying to understand and trying to have answered as they traverse through the stages of your experience. That grounds the business in moving this work from a cool exercise to operationalizing, to earning the right to those quotes. Here's another way of orienting the prioritization of those moments of truth. And we find this is very, very important. I'm missing an A there. I apologize. I have a typo at the top of my defector pipeline. Especially in very product-driven and sales-driven organizations, instead of saying we have 15 moments of truth, what you might want to do is say we have these intersection points that are a defector pipeline. And if we don't meet these or intersect with the customer at these touch points, we're going to lose the ability for them to want to add more. We're going to erode in value in their eyes. And we're going to not be able to grow our business. For example, under benefit and grow, that stage of a SaaS experience, you know, a lot of you are probably selling big contracts to customers. What you should be able to see in your data is, let's say they bought $50,000 worth of products but have only downloaded 20%. You should be able to see inside of that data that something has happened that has not allowed them to use that information, and you should be proactively reaching out. That's what your defector pipeline does for you, and that immediately connects this customer experience work to growth and profitability. The third competency is what I call building a listening muscle. And yes, it's about surveys, but it's about focused surveys, and it's about herding the cats. In many organizations, what we've done is every silo's created their own version of a survey they want to send to customers. I would encourage you to just do 2 kinds of surveys if you can, but that initially starts with herding the cats, bringing everybody together, and agreeing on uniting the information and not creating survey fatigue. One is some kind of a relational touch point where you ask a rolling group of customers when they've reached a certain point in their life cycle with you, in their life amount of years with you, how is it going? And I'm an advocate of just a couple questions. The other is, after you've mapped your touch points and you know the top 10 to 15 moments of truth or intersection points on your defector pipeline, send out a survey then. I wouldn't be a proponent of all 15 touch points, but you may find there's 2 or 3 that really make or break your revenue and profitability stream. So that's surveys. But the more powerful part of customer listening is that real-time feedback that comes from unaided feedback. You likely have many, many what I call listening pipes across your organization where customers are volunteering feedback from you. Inventory all those places. Is it on your website where you ask for feedback? Is it when they call your call center? Is it when they return a product? And one of the most powerful things there is trending that information and then reporting anything you hear, not in a dashboard where every silo can chip away at it, but use that framework that we talked about in Competency 2 and present your listening information stage by stage to keep that story going of the customer's life. The third competency is being even more proactive. It's great to ask your customer how you're doing, but you should know before your customer tells you when your most critical processes are out of whack. So this is the intersection of quality and Lean Six Sigma and experience, process improvement, and customer experience work. And this takes those same critical 10 to 15 moments of truth and forces you in a way to build proactive teams where you will process map those key KPIs that are important to your customers, not the internal metrics that you only care about. Take them out of the dashboards of the silos, and with as much rigor as you talk about revenue and how many sales you made that month or quarter or year, you should be talking about whether you met the processes for those make or break moments. And what this does is it adds to that story that I'm encouraging you to tell to your company with that long run-on sentence, and that is as a result of the experience we delivered this past month or quarter or year. Here's the growth or loss of the customer asset. That's competency 1. Competency 2, let me now walk you across the stages of the experience. Competency 3, stage by stage, I'm going to tell you where we spiked in complaints. And competency 4, by the way, it makes sense that we spiked in complaints here because we weren't meeting our process cycle times. And our survey metrics validate this. Your surveys shouldn't be telling you anything new, but yet, as the story you're telling, it should validate what you already know and connect with competency 4 to start aligning and uniting your leaders to pick the critical few things to work on versus every silo cherry picking hundreds of projects that may actually conflict with one another or spend the same similar resources on doing the same thing differently. And that's what competency 5 is about accountability. And the power here is something I call a customer room. So what I'd encourage you to do as your Chief Customer Officer or Chief Experience Officer is to engage your organization, especially your top leaders, in coming together on a monthly basis, and this is where you knit it all together. You can do paper chevrons on a wall to start with. You don't have to have anything crazy electronically, but walk them through first your asset, then stage by stage, show them screenshots, bring it up of where the experience fails or works, show them the trends of your complaints, show them where you're making or breaking those process metrics, and tie it all up in where you are in your survey results. And then encourage your leaders collectively to pick the few things they are going to dedicate resources. Then you bring those resources together in a cross-functional team and have them go back and work on first month reporting back to that executive team the current experience. Second month, what the root cause issues. Third month, a proposal and a request for funds. And fourth month, you're off and running, if you can move that fast, to implement a solution. If you can unite your organization to have an engine, a mechanism to drive this, I guarantee you will get traction and people will understand what your role is. Your role isn't to fix the problem. Your role is to create the comprehensive view that doesn't exist in the organization, to create the infrastructure to be able to present it to the executives, and to create the ability for the organization to work together. A lot of this has to do with also decision making, and that is around this notion of why are you in business? So one of the other things I encourage you to facilitate your executives is get clarity of purpose so that as people are making decisions around the organization, it's aligned to what you're doing to improve the customer's life. One of my favorite examples of this is Rackspace, which many people may know, which is their clarity of purpose is peace to the IT manager. So if you're really going to deliver peace to the IT manager, then that means you're going to do a set of things that are important and specific to their life, and you're not going to, for example, not have anyone for them to call at 3 in the morning when their website goes down, when something might happen with the servers or the support of the website. As the Chief Customer Officer or the Chief Experience Officer, you must have your CEO on board. If he or she is not, it is very difficult to drive this because at the end of the day, your organization needs to see you as someone linking arms with this executive and your executive team, and they must take personal ownership for this work. It must be seen as important to them as to you, that it's not something that's handed off to you. As you're building out these competencies with your CEO and your executive team, have them make sure people understand your role as I articulated it. Get them to commit to those monthly accountability meetings. And, you know, every role I've ever had as a Chief Customer Officer for 25 years, there are some parts of the organization that just wanted me to go away. They need to provide that political air cover because you are going to be getting in people's stuff. And number 5 is a hard one, and that's insist on corporate patience. In this work, you'll be able to pick off a few critical moments of truth in your defector pipeline that show the erosion of revenue and profitability short term, but long term, to embed these 5 competencies, it's going to take some time, years even, and you need to make sure people are committed to the work. And then finally, work with them to create a communication plan, to demystify the roadmap. I call it the shopping mall map of where you are. We are here now. Now we've moved 2 steps forward. You need to communicate to your organization with your CEO, your executive team, and from your own group. And what I call this is marketing hope, that the commitment is real, that actions are being taken, and that you're earning the right to move the work forward. So to summarize these 5 competencies, they are, number 1, managing the customer as an asset of your business, knowing the growth and loss of those customers and caring about the reason why. Number 2, aligning your organization around experience, not to just do that great touchpoint mapping exercise, but to create the framework for how your leaders talk, for how your CEO does his monthly meeting, and for how you talk about the life of customers. Number 3, building your listening engine that uses aided listening, which is surveys, but unaided listening too, using those millions of points of information from customers volunteering information, from your social media, but most importantly, reporting it stage by stage of your experience. Number 4, proactive experience management, managing your own processes so you don't have to wait for your customer to tell you when you're out of line and disappointing them. And number 5, driving that united leadership through culture and that critical key customer room, which will drive accountability and working on the few versus every silo picking the many projects. So here's a couple questions for you before I turn it over to Omer. As your role of the Chief Experience Officer or the Chief Customer Officer, where are you now in terms of your leader commitment and engagement? Is it a hand wave, or is your leadership team fully engaged and driving accountability? In terms of actions, is it reactive problem solving where CEO or your executives go out in the field, or are you listening and creating a reliable and a calm way to always know what the emerging issues are? And then finally, have you connected those silos to do the work, or are people still cherry picking and picking off their own projects to make their own scorecards deliver those high scores, which actually in reality don't always mean or translate something good for the customer? Here's some information on how you can reach me, customerbliss.com. My blog also, which has all of this information, is ccocoach.com, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm going to now turn it over to Omer. Omer, thanks so much.
Well, thanks, Jean, for an enlightening presentation. Jean will join us again in a few minutes to answer any question that you have. So let's start with my part. My name is Omer Gottlieb. I founded Tutango about 4 years ago, and I'm heading our customer success organization. And what's interesting about my position in Tutango is that I'm not only building a customer success organization in an emerging market, we're actually also helping other customers and other chief customer officers to build their own customer success organizations. So what I wanted to do in the next 5 minutes is simply share with you some of the best practices in place that both me and other chief customer officers are using in order to make sure our organization are successful in actually implementing many of the things that Jean spoke about. We'll start with what does Tutango do? So Tutango actually sifts out a lot of information about your customers. If you have a cloud application or a SaaS application, we can connect to it. We can connect to other business applications that you have there and actually find out a lot of insights about your customers and users and make it actionable so you can drive revenues and drive renewals and drive retentions. The way that we can help you is actually we're going to make sure that your customers are successful. Jim spoke about a customer listening engine. If you have a web application, if you have a cloud application, we're going to build this listening engine for you. You'll know if your customers see value. You'll get an early alert system to detect if there's a potential sign of churn, and actually understand if there's any problem with your customers in the process, in their different life cycle stages, maybe specific team members that need attention. So again, a full comprehensive listening engines about what's happening with your customers, how do I as a company interact with them. Well, of course, Gene spoke about the moments of truth, so we'll help you monitor those things and alert about those things, identify those in real time, which leads me to the third point, will help you be proactive. So the idea is that once you identify the right moments in time that you need to take action, Tutango will help you drive those actions and proactively help your customers. We're doing that based on our methodology that actually drives always customers to value. Gene spoke about touch point. I call it a little bit more in the customer life cycle stages. And you need to remember that you have different type of customers, and each one of them has a different type of stages. Your goal is actually to get them up to the right in the green as fast as you can. Once they sign up with you, they need to get the first value as soon as possible. Then your goal would be is how do I get them to grow value and ongoing value. So on an ongoing basis, they'll keep using your system more and more. And then once they reach the stage, of course, how do I get them to additional value to increase upsells and add-ons and of course, make sure that they're happy. So again, you need to remember that for each one of your customers, there's a different life cycle journeys, and each one of them is actually yields different type of behaviors from your customers. So some of the guidelines that guide me and my team when we run a customer success organization in Tutango, and Gene spoke about a differentiated customer experience. I really believe that, and we'll focus on Tutango and making sure that all the time our customers see value. Throughout each interactions with our team, with our product, with our documentation, how can we make sure that they see value? How can we help them see more value? So, for example, we're focusing on what we call contextual engagement. Not just time-based, not just QBRs every quarter, which are based on our timeline. We're actually basing them on their timeline. Moments of truth. If something happens, if something needs to happen, this is the time when we engage with them, again, based on the different life cycle stages. And you also need to remember that, we do have customers, accounts, but there's also specific users within. So actually, each one of the users may expect different touch point, different value point, and different behavior. And using Tutango, we encourage all those things. Of course, we monitor the right information in real time, mainly to identify those moments of truth. Those moments of truth, by the way, can be negative. So you can identify that something is wrong with the customer, that they didn't get the experience they expected to, but also positive. If they're achieving some things, if they're exploring new features and functions, if they're doing some good things, these are the moments of truth. And based on that, these are the times that we want to engage with our customers. And of course, it's always about be proactive. How do I identify this in time, and how do I approach them before it's a little bit too late? One last thing, which I know it's a little bit controversial, but all customers are equal for us. In Tutango, we have high-end enterprise customers and small customers, and we'd like to actually formalize the experience and give everyone the great experience that we can. Some of them, by the way, are getting it more by human touch, so they have a dedicated customer success manager that is working directly with them. Some of them, we automate the process, but we don't neglect our small customers. We make sure that everybody sees value. Now, there's going to be maybe different value points for different types of customers, but the idea is that if you treat your customers in that way, make sure that everybody, small to large, see value, that's the way to win. So let's think about some plays that actually we're utilizing in Tutango, and by the way, most of our customers are using some of this. Of course, number one is how to identify at-risk account. And again, you need to look at value points. Do they see enough value from your offering? Where can you improve? And also adoptions. Are they, everybody that bought the license is using it, or just 10%? Are they using 10% of my product or 90%? These are all the things that we monitor and alert by it. And also specific events. If somebody, if you have a CRM system and somebody starts exporting the data, that could be an alarming event. Pick up the phone and call them. If there's an admin change, that's an opportunity to reach out and introduce yourself, and again, maybe they need training and so forth. So identify at-risk count. The second thing is about driving feature adoption. One of the best ways, if you're a cloud company or SaaS company, is one of the best ways to make sure your customers see value, make sure they're using your product. So proactively identify where the areas of the product that are not being used, by who, and drive what we call engagement campaigns. Those could be one-to-one, when your CSM actually approach them and speak with them. It could be automatic with the marketing campaign, and it could be one-to-many, where one CSM is doing a webinar, but for the right people, the right audience, and in the right context. So if you identify somebody that didn't use your specific module, focus on this content and have a webinar about this. Number 3 is about the onboarding process. We found out that the success of the onboarding process is really critical to retention. If you analyze churn, you can see that most of the time their onboarding process was successful. So in Dutango, we have what we call Live in 5, which gets you to first value as soon as possible. So the goal would be, how quickly can I get you to see some value from my application? It doesn't mean that you're using everything. It doesn't mean that you see all value, but you get to see some value, we call it first value, as soon as possible. So think how you can actually implement that in your organization. Number 4 is about champion. So you sold the product, and you probably have an executive sponsor, and you probably have users, but there's always going to be a champion. Somebody who's going to use you more than the others. You need to find out who they are, identify them. Of course, automatically you can do that using Dutango, and nurture them to make them advocates. It'll be very beneficial for you because they'll advocate you both internally, and they'll make sure that everybody sees value and everybody is actually using you, but also externally. Quite a few of our customers are actually coming from reference that champions that we nurtured are referred to us. Number 5 is about, again, identifying opportunities like new people. If you identify that there's some new people that joined your customers base, why not approach them again proactively and offer training? It will actually buy your customer for life because they'll know that you're there to provide them value. They'll give them a head start to use it. And again, it's going to be very valuable for you and them. Number 6 is about analyze. Again, if you have data, make sure that you analyze and see the performance of your customers. And if I get back to the life cycle stages, again, remember that you have different segments of customers, you have different stages, you have different user roles, and each one of them should actually have different results. So the CEO of a company should probably be using your product a little bit differently than a project manager, which is great, which is fine. As long as you define it, measure it, and analyze it, that's the way to succeed. Number 7 is about making impact. So I spoke about running a lot of engagement campaigns and approaching customers. Are they effective? So measure those things. Don't just do things because somebody told you. Try those things. There's always going to be trial and error. So make sure that you measure the impact. Make sure that if you're, for example, running a webinar, will more people start using this feature after that? If I actually send them an email, are they healthy account now or healthier account better than before? So measure the things and make sure that you as a team are getting better and providing the right experience for the company and the customers. And the last thing, which is more internal, it's about celebrating moments of truth. Again, I had a presentation, you can see the link over there, which is a little longer than that, but you need to remember that we're not just dealing with the hospitals. We need to stop firefighting and just deal with those that need attention, but also identify how we can bring more customers to value, how we can celebrate when they actually are achieving something. When I have a new customer live in 5, a new customer goes live, that's great. I'm celebrating that within my company. When somebody's actually, exploring new features and functions, that's another moment of truth. And if they're using it, of course. And again, these are the things that I encourage you to celebrate, both externally with the customer, but not less important, also internally with your team, and to bring you a lot of energy and a lot of excitement also within your company. So I'm hopeful that I was able to give you some ideas about how to implement some of the ideas that Jean spoke about in order to be able to run a much more successful customer success organization. Thank you very much, and I'll head up to Christine now.
Great. Thank you both, Jean and Omer. I'd like to encourage the audience to do two things right now. If you have a question for either or both speakers, go ahead and click the Ask a Question tab at the top of the webinar player and submit that. We also, if you do have to hop off for time reasons, we would love your feedback and ratings of this webinar before you leave, so click on the Ask or Rate this webinar button as well. So as we dive into Q&A, we do have a few questions that have come in. It looks like one question for Jean is, you pretty much have said that if you increase and improve customer experience, you see an increase in revenue and sales. But then out there, in research, there's countless variables that drive customer spending. So how do you actually contribute revenue growth directly to customer experience? Is there a way to tie in the two directly?
Well, that's a good question. In fact, both of the questions are that people have asked so far are about revenue and connecting it to the work. And you're fortunate if you're doing a SaaS business because, as Omer just mentioned, and as I identified on the defector pipeline, what we're able to understand is where along the journey are the inflection points that are disappointing customers or changing their behavior. And the way that I showed the information, the reason why I have you tell the story with many different types of information is so that it's not anecdotal. We've got the trending of the complaints. We're going to call lost customers and map that to the journey. That builds the first framework of your defector pipeline. We then find out the trending of your key KPIs and where you've met or not met them. If you've not met key KPIs, easy for me to say, and we do the data analysis and show that a high percent of customers whose process metric is not met there, we can, and have defected or decreased their spending, we can connect it to that disconnect, that impairment in the experience. Like Omer talked about, we know that onboarding and lack of the ability to onboard impacts future purchases because we can go into the data and do the modeling and show the customers that did not have a good onboarding experience. The other one that Omer talked about that we use a lot in SaaS customers is this idea of you're not using all of the product that was purchased. And all of that we're able to show that there's probably a reason why they didn't use all of the product purchased. So what we do in the storytelling in the customer room is show what's emerging as the issue through the complaint trending, through the KPIs that are not meeting expectations, through the validation by the survey results, through closed-loop follow-up to disappointed customers, and then we go deeper on those experience steps that connect directly to why they defected, why they left, or why they stopped buying as much as they did before, and that's how we connect the dots.
I want to add to that, and one of the questions was about are you going to use or advocate predictive analytics to determine what are the factors that actually cause churn, and do you improve it? And the answer is of course, because
I agree.
because right now you have data specifically for a cloud and SaaS application, you can literally identify what caused churn. It could be some generic things like onboarding took much too long. It could be that they're not using enough of the features and functions, not spending enough time. It could be license utilization, which is low. We have some generic indication that we found for our customers. So literally, you can look it back and improve your onboarding process, improve your product, improve your training, improve your customer success outreach, and specifically address those things. So that's exactly some of the things that we're doing with our customers.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, Omer. That's actually what I was saying. I should have referred to predictive on when I was mentioning that as well. The key is your job is to connect the dots so that people aren't in a disparate way only looking at the survey results. So they're not only looking at emerging complaints, because otherwise that's where you get the firefighting that Omer responded to. That's where you get just the reactive problem solving. We need to know through the predictive information, starting with the framework of the defector pipeline, touch points, and then manage a process to, in an organized way, get rid of those things that are impairing people from buying more, people from staying with you, and that advocacy that you ultimately want that drives recommendations. But there, especially if you're running a SaaS business, you have such powerful information that enables you to be very, very predictive and connect the dots that many traditional businesses cannot do.
Great, thank you, both. So this might be a question for Omer to take first. Is someone wanted to know, in building a customer success team, do you prefer to have unified jobs across all team members, or do you split the tasks between them? So more specifically, have someone responsible for acquisition and others more responsible for retention, or should you do both?
Well, I actually prefer to split those things. I found out that you really need different type of people to be able to deal with, I'd say, the numbers things, so dealing with contracts and negotiation and acquisitions, and customer and other people that are actually focused on making sure that you see value. Again, usually these are different type of people, and rarely it's that you find a person that can actually do both. So again, my recommendation is have the sales team or acquisition team deal with that, and the customer success team deal with making sure customers see value. Another anecdote is, just for example, in Tutango, the pre-sale engineers are actually people in the customer success organization. The reason is that in Tutango, it's about best practices and how to work with the customer success organization, and the best people that can actually advocate about it are people that has experience with working with customers. But generally, I think there should be different type of people responsible for the acquisition and different type of people that responsible for making sure customers see value and, of course, stay with you.
Great, and a new question for Jean. So regarding thought leadership and placing an importance and the weight of it within customer success, is it a necessary touch point?
How do you think? Thought lead. In terms of providing, yes. Sorry, I was reading the question again. I apologize to understand. One of the stages of the experience of the customer journey that companies forget about is this whole stage, which is not transactional, but rather relational. How do you earn the right to the customer feeling that you're more than somebody who sells them things? And included in that are several things. One is the company you're working with feels, your customer feels that you know them. You are providing them with relevant thought leadership or relevant counseling based on their business, and providing them with either packaged or relevant thought leadership, we find when we talk to customers, is very, very important, because companies feel like they want to get more from you in terms of value than just the thing you sell. And so it's not just bundling thought leadership for the masses, but as relevant as you can make it, we find is important. We've also found in almost every kind of B2B account situation that this notion of an annual meeting, sometimes biannual, to sit down and talk about your business and customize an approach to help you grow is very, very powerful.
Okay, and I think, Jean, as you were, answering about that, someone sent a new question about satisfaction surveys. Can you give 3 or 5 examples of some really good, best questions to ask?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I like doing 2 kinds of surveys, and I tend to be an advocate of the Net Promoter approach because I like the 0 to 10 scale. I think that the vastness of that scale gives people truly a difference between a 5 and a 10. When you're in a 0 to 5 scale, for example, or 1 to 5, there's so much closeness between some of those scales. So that's my kind of overview of why I'm about to say what I'm about to say. Given that, what we typically will ask are 2 or 3 questions. And if it's a relational survey, it's based on your overall experience with Name Your Company. Would you recommend us to a colleague or a friend? And then the next question I like to ask, and lots of people have different variances on this, is tell us one thing you want us to improve. Now, the reason I do that is because the question that lots of times people ask is, can you tell us why you gave us that score? Well, who knows? Oh, you were nice. Or you get these kind of fluffy answers. If you say, can you tell us one thing, you'll get operational and tactical answers. And what's powerful in that is it doesn't lull you into the false feeling of, oh, we have a lot of, if you use Net Promoter language, promoters, and therefore they're 100% happy, because what you can do is then sort that information and say, look, promoters want this, passives want this, and detractors want this. And it becomes very powerful, and if you use the customer journey framework, it becomes more and more of that fodder that goes into your storytelling. The second kind of question then is transactional, based on, again, if you're going to do follow-up, for example, as a result of your onboarding experience with our company, would you recommend? So now you're asking, and this is where you get more pithy operational information that can go directly to the teams of people who impact onboarding. What this does, by separating your relational survey from your transactional, is it prevents what I call the kitchen sink survey. And a lot of people probably know what I mean by that, but let me explain. That's, you're building your survey, and ops wants this, so you add 3 questions in. Marketing wants this, so you add 3 questions in. Product division A wants this, and suddenly you have a 40-question survey, and you might pop in the Net Promoter question at the end. Your customer's exhausted, and it becomes very difficult to manage, and then you're back to those dashboards.
Just one more insight on my side about surveys. I think, they can be great, but think about if you really have the right information about your customers before, then as Jean said, the surveys are there just to validate your assumptions. So
exactly.
Again, make sure you have the right data and not wait for surveys that sometimes could be a little bit lagging. If you have the right data, survey can be a great means to validate your assumptions.
Great. Well, thank you both, Jean and Omer. We are at the top of the hour, and I would like to show the Learn More slide for the audience members. If you'd like to learn more about Jean, we've displayed her website, customerbliss.com, her blog, and you can follow her on Twitter at Jean Bliss. You could also learn more about Tatango at tatango.com. We have our blog, and follow us on Twitter at Tatango. And with that, I'd like to thank, both of our speakers in the audience today for joining us. And again, please give us your feedback and your ratings. Thanks, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.